Yo, what up, boys? I just want to make a video talking about my Lightning Strike Raider build, which I've been playing since league start. I've been having a really good time with it. I've been really enjoying making use of the new defenses and stuff that we get on Raider. And the build is like really tanky, it's very fast, it does a lot of damage, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So first things first, one thing I'd like to settle is this whole thing about Raider versus Berserker. And for that, you're gonna have to tune in to our boxing match between me and Kobe Black Mamba. It's gonna be on the 31st of December, and the winner finally decides which one is better. So make sure you tune in for that. Okay, now let's talk about the build. So the build is it's a Raider. We get use of spell suppression, evasion, and armor. So we're going for a tri-defense setup. As you can see here from our EHP, we can take hits. We can take really big hits. We have like a maximum hit taken of like 76k for Fizz, 324k effective HP pool, and that is because of the 40% avoidance that we get from elusive. So that bumps up the number. Also, 72% chance to evade because of our evasion, and we just have an absolute ton of armor, which we get from Granite Flask, Determination, and just by using armor bases. So yeah. With 100% spell suppression as well, we can tank Cirrus Beams. That is no problem at all. We just basically stand in them. The only thing that hurts us there is Corrupting Blood, and that's even in the last phase. With all that being said, we deal 11 million damage if positioned correctly, and 19 million in our burst phase. So when we deal, when we drop down 2 Vaal Lightning Strikes. So the build does a lot of damage, and you'll be able to see here from the gear that it's actually not that insane. It's actually pretty standard gear. The chest is you can change this around with whatever you like. You can use a Feral's Fur for more consistency for frenzy charge generation and power charge generation and that sort of stuff. Mark of the Elder, Assassin's Mark Ring, very basic stuff. But anyways, this is more of a showcase, and I will link the POB down below. So here's a little video of me mapping on a Beyond map without Headhunter. And this is sort of what it looks like. This is a pretty juiced up map, 130 quant, and the build is like really fast. It's got about 300 movement speed. Claws make it able to get around 50 life gain on hit. So with that much life gain on hit, pretty much as long as we're hitting stuff, we're never going to be dying. Like there's very little that can actually one-shot us unless we're doing penetration or minus max. So when you get those two mods, pen or minus max, then we're in trouble because we're actually a lot tankier for Fizz than we are for Elemental, since we don't really have much access to max res and things like that, unless we choose to go for like maybe a brass dome chest, but which I do not recommend, because it's sort of, it makes it so like I think the chest slot is very powerful slot, and it shouldn't really be taken for granted. Like we can get so much from a chest slot these days. We can go for explode, power charge on crit, percent life, attack crit, all that sort of stuff. So I would much rather have a rare slot over maybe a Feral's Fur or something like that. But if you really like consistency and you're looking to do Cirrus more than I do, you can go for a Feral's Fur, because Feral's Fur is actually gonna guarantee you to have 0 ramp time on Cirrus, which is the main issue I have with Cirrus right now, is I have to ramp up to 10 frenzies every time I engage him, and you know how much he jumps around. And when using Dark Ray vectors, we have a 9-second window to keep our frenzies up. So if he jumps around and you have 9 seconds and you don't hit him, then you're pretty much screwed. So yeah, in that situation, Feral's Fur is actually pretty good. But in every other situation, which is 99% of my gameplay, is mapping. In every other situation, I think Feral's Fur is actually just a terrible chest, because you don't need frenzy charge generation when you're a Raider. Obviously, you have 20% chance to gain a frenzy on hit, so you're always capped on frenzies, obviously, as long as you're hitting stuff, which is when you're mapping, which is 99% of your gameplay, or when you're delving, alternatively, which is something that I was doing as well. So yeah, I mean the build, as you can see, is very fast. It uses Herald of Ice. It helps a little bit. I am using a Explode Chest in this setup. Explode Chest is honestly, for mapping, Explode Chest is not that good. It's not that good. What it's actually good for is for when I'm delving. I'm currently at delve depth 600 with this build, and it's performing quite well. It doesn't really ever die unless I go again into penetration zones, then it actually has a little bit of trouble doing that. So, but you know, it still survives so long as we don't get one shot. We're completely fine because of our attack speed and our life gain on hit. So I'm gonna sort of skip here to when I do a delve. And here we go. This is what it looks like at delve depth 600, which is pretty much equivalent to what delve depth 1700 used to be in terms of how tanky the monsters are. But their damage is obviously a lot scaled down in a magnitude of probably 1000. If you guys don't know, delve right now is absolutely insane. There's so much currency in delve and it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you to maybe go have a look at delve and try it out because it's really honestly a lot of fun. And it's nice to have a build like this. You can see that my HP on the left here is just shooting up and down. And that is because of our life gain on hit. So anytime we get hit, it just shoots back up to full. Because of, you know, how much life gain we're getting on hit. And so that makes us extremely tanky against most of our, you know, in most situations in the game. AKA when we don't get one shot. But we survive. We survive Cirrus Beams, we survive Shaper Slams, we survive Minnow Slams, so we have absolutely no issue tanking big hits. But again, the only time we do actually end up dying is, you know, when we get like minus max or pen. So, yeah. I'll take a look at the POV now for a minute and explain some of the gear choices and what I would recommend for this build. For the claw, we want to go for a hybrid elemental damage claw. That is because we are using Trinity. So hybrid elemental, what I mean by that is you should have lightning damage is mandatory on this because otherwise your Trinity is not going to work. So a high lightning damage roll and a fire roll, or alternatively a cold roll. I opted in for a cold roll because I think it gives me more consistent freezes, and I think freezes are more important than ignites, obviously, because ignites don't really do anything. So yeah, I went for a lightning and cold, and the way you craft that is by spamming essences on it. Ideally, you would get a fractured base, but fracturing a base is expensive, as you know. It's about 5x for a fracture suffix. If you did want to go for fracturing, what you should do is you should get an item level 86 Imperial or Noble Claw, depending on your in requirements. And what you do is you roll with an essence, the attack speed essence, a Zeal essence, which 30% attack speed. And you roll those essences until you get T1 critical strike as well. You divine both critical strike and attack speed to perfect, and then you fracture it for a 66% chance to fracture something useful. And if you're lucky, you get it first try. If you're unlucky like me, you get it third try. So, yep. Anyways, then you have a claw, and then you spam hatred or wrath essences on it until you hit, you know, T1 lightning and T1 cold, and you can just multi-mod off there. The best mods to have on the claw, and what I think is mandatory, is you need to have lightning damage, you need to have crit, and you need to have attack speed. You need to have those things. It's really important. Otherwise, we won't be able to get our crit. We won't be able to get our, you know, enough attack speed for the build to feel good. So it's very important. So on the shield, this is the slot that I use to fill my spell suppression and my ailment avoidance. We want 20% ailment avoidance on the shield because we actually get full ailment avoidance by having 20% here, 50% from Raider. Then we get another 20% here. And then I get 20% on the belt as well. So that is with a belt enchant, which I actually forgot to put in this POB, so I'll put it there right now. We apply enchant, and if you run this through lab with what is it called? Elusive. There it is. 20% chance to avoid elemental ailments while you have elusive. So that is gonna cap our ailment avoidance just there. You can also have like a 10 roll on the shield. It doesn't really matter. So yeah. So you just want to make sure that you have 100% ailment avoidance that way. And this is the easiest way that I know to cap your ailment avoidance without actually investing into it too hard. As a raider, it's really nice because we have the base 50% avoidance, which is super cool. So yeah. For our helmet, this is it's a flexible slot. The best thing you can get is nearby enemies take 6% elemental damage. That's because we're a hybrid elemental damage build, so we can't really focus in on anything, so we take that. The best in slot helmet in this case would be a Blizzard's Crown, and you can get a Blizzard's Crown, although it's very, very expensive, and you would roll it with a Shaper. You know, you would roll a Shaper Blizzard's Crown. And I think the best way to craft this would just be to spam greed essences until you hit nearby enemies. Take increased elemental damage. and hopefully some other good stats. But that's a pretty expensive craft. So as I said earlier, the chest is very flexible. I opted in for Woke Orbing % life with Explode. Alternatively, what you can also do is you can Woke Orb Power Charge on crit with attack crit suffixes, and then you can just roll the prefixes by doing suffixes cannot be changed, reforged life until you get good life. Either way, you can either do that or you can go for, you know, like a Feral's Fur or Lionized Vision, which is also very good. So yeah, you can do that. Also, let me just reiterate how important it is to choose good bases. So hybrid evasion armor bases are good. I went for an evasion base on the helmet. I went for armor base on the chest. It's absolutely super important that you go for an armor base on the gloves. And I will talk about that later. That is because the masteries. We have armor evasion boots, and then everything else is whatever, right? Yeah. So for the gloves, this is really important. So you need skill strikes target one additional enemy at the very minimum, and mavening it to 2 will make it so that you don't have to actually get Tribal Fury on the amulet. So if you have skill strikes 2 additional nearby enemies, you can anoint something else on your amulet. But if you have 1, then you have to anoint Tribal Fury. That is because you really want to have at least 2 additional strikes. So yeah, that is very important. And one thing that you can do is you can just Maven this with +1 Frenzy. And yeah, so that is what I did there. I Maven +1 Frenzy with 2 additional strikes, and that's how I got these gloves. They're pretty good. I did it on Spike Gloves because at least it gives us some damage to our melee hit, which you can see is here. It gives some damage to that, although it does not give us damage to the projectiles. And the reason why I went for Spike Gloves is because I take this mastery right here, this one right here, which gives me 1 evasion rating per 1 armor on gloves, and just the base armor that you see on these gloves, which is 282, that is giving me 1,929 evasion, which is an absolute ton because of how much % evasion we have increased, and primarily that is because we get 10% evasion here per frenzy charge, and we also get 10% evasion here as well. So every frenzy charge will give us 20% evasion. So yeah, that is how we get that and why we got so much evasion there. So because we already have 21,000 base evasion, now we can talk about the auras. So I use Determination and Defiance Banner to boost my defenses even further. And I think it's because armor is just absolutely broken this league. Determination is insane. Like, this alone is giving me 16% physical damage reduction and 21,000 armor. Like, it's absolutely just insane. So 21,000 armor from there, from just having Determination up. And we get the rest of our armor from having pretty well rolled flasks. So we have armor flask and % increased armor as a suffix. Since we are ailment immune, we can afford to do that. So yeah. We use Anger because Anger is the highest flat damage aura that we can get. We just care about getting a lot of flat damage. Alternatively, Wrath is about 1% damage increase, but we do not have enough intelligence to use that. So yeah, we don't use we don't use that. So yeah, we use Anger, we use Enlightened, Determination, and Herald Vice. I use a level 3 Enlightened, and that's plenty. So yeah, you just do that. And let me put this to level 1, and the int requirement should be good. For our main links, we're using Lightning Strike. I use Anomalous Lightning Strike for 2 Pierce. You don't need this. You can also get a Pierce either on the skill tree. You can get 3 Pierce here, or you can craft +1 Pierce on Helmet and +1 Pierce on Gloves. That is a 1 Divine craft. The crafting bench. But what's really important is that you do get a Vaal Lightning Strike. It's really fun. It's really nice to get that, to get that burst down and getting that down. So yeah, get that Vaal Lightning Strike. Nightblade is the most broken support in the game. This is pretty much where most of our damage comes from. This is there's some funny interactions that I will talk about here in a second as well with Nightblade. Nightblade is giving us how much critical strike multiplier is it giving us? It's making us go from 866 multi to 375. Because the critical strike multiplier from Nightblade is actually scaled with elusive effect. So that makes things like this insane. So you see from the shadows, this is actually a dagger cluster. This dagger cluster is giving 40% elusive effect, right? That 40% elusive effect is giving me 8% damage and 13% movement speed. And then we get 40% multi from this, which is elusive also grants 40% critical strike multiplier for skills supported by Nightblade, which is this cluster here. And so this cluster here is giving us about 20% damage for 3 points. It's absolutely insane. And then we also get Claw Mastery. Skills supported by Nightblade have 40% increased elusive effect. You can see this is red, so it's not actually an effect. So what I actually did is I went here and I typed it here. 40% increased elusive effect. And that is giving us 866 crit multi all up. And we have 0 critical strike multiplier on our gear aside for our necklace. But we have so much critical strike multiplier that actually we have hit diminishing returns so hard that it's not worth it to actually get any more critical strike multiplier anywhere on our gear. It's actually better to get 10% increased damage over 10% critical strike multiplier at this point. So yeah, keep that in mind. So that is Nightblade. We use added cold damage. This is our best flat damage added support. So we also use that to balance out our Trinity. I use Inspiration here, although you could use Multi-Strike. It's completely up to you. Multi-Strike is actually more damage. The reason why I don't like Multi-Strike is because it feels a little bit more clunky. So I prefer not to use Multi-Strike. Inspiration actually gives, it makes the build feel smoother. It gives you less mana cost, and you can go for Divergent. So yeah, Inspiration is really good there. And then there's Trinity, which is obviously one of the most broken supports in the game. This is what also enables us to go for Tri-Element. And we have Awaken Elemental Damage with attacks, which also at level 5 now makes us immune to Reflect. So yeah. To talk about Trinity, you need to actually make sure that your damage calculations are equal. So when you go here and you select Lightning Strike, you want to look at this. You see the variance is 4k to 52k, and then cold damage is 32k to 52k. What you have to do is you have to make them so they're pretty close to each other. So there will always be times where cold damage will hit higher, and then lightning damage will hit higher once in a while if cold damage rolls a low hit, right? If it rolls a low roll, then lightning damage will hit higher, and that is how Trinity works. That is how we fill up the bar, is if once in a while lightning actually hits for higher than cold, then we will get full Trinity, and as long as these are pretty close together, we will be able to get Trinity uptime to 100% even on single target. So it's really important that you actually keep these two in mind. And there's an icon at the top left of your screen, which you can see over here. And if that is full and you see the triangle, then that means it's good. You can see that at the very start of the map, you see how that's filling up equally once I start hitting stuff. That is what you want to see from Trinity. So yeah, that is how Trinity works there. Cool. So that is pretty much our main links there. We talked about our auras. Then we use our totems. We have Protector and Ancestral War Chief with Calling Strike. We have to have multiple totems to put these down. And what you're just gonna do is once you get to a single target, you're just gonna chuck them down, and then they're gonna help you a little bit with single target. For our cast when damage taken setup, you can go Molten Shell, increased duration, cast when damage taken. Summon Stone Golem, I wouldn't even put it in there because it requires so much mana to cast. So maybe I would even actually put Inspiration instead. So that makes Molten Shell actually cost less mana, and that guarantees that even if you have lower mana, it's gonna proc. So that is that. Then we have Blood Rage, Defiance Banner, and Whirling Blades. You don't actually need to link Whirling Blades for faster attacks for it to feel good. We have so much attack speed that it's completely fine for it to be unlinked. Defiance Banner is insane. This is giving us 7% evasion and 17% armor. So yeah, use Defiance Banner for 10% aura. It's crazy good. It's really, really good. And yeah, we use Withering Step on left click. This is important. Withering Step is on left click. That is because it will reset our elusive. It's super important to reset our elusive because as it goes down, our elusive effect, we will lose critical strike multiplier, aka we will lose a lot of damage. So you want to have Withering Step on left click, and it always needs to trigger. And every time it triggers, once you attack, it will go away, and you will regain your elusive from Nightblade. So you will always guarantee that you have maximum critical strike multiplier and maximum damage that way. So the way that you play is you always have your left click. If you know you're moving with your left click, you always have that click down, and then you right click and you just keep your left click down all the time, so that you're withering stepping. And yeah. And then I just have flame dash because sometimes we need to jump over a gap. I very rarely use it, but when Whirling Blaze doesn't work, then you want to flame dash there. And that is pretty much the links. And we talked about the items. I'll just quickly talk about the tree. So I have gone through a lot of iterations of this in PoB, and I have not ever found an iterate. Like, I've never really found a way to make a cluster fit into this build and it being good. Like, there's no, like, I always lost damage and I lost defense when putting in clusters. And I just think the tree is so strong now, especially for claw builds, and the mastery is giving us so much damage and survivability and things like that. So yeah, we get elusive effect from the claw mastery, as I talked about the dagger mastery as well. We take 50 flat life and 10% increased life. We grab depth perception for our accuracy and critical strike chance. Here I opted in for getting 15% elemental res, but if you can cap your res elsewhere, then you can grab something else there. You know, like effective non-damaging ailments instead, which is pretty nice. Alternatively, you can also grab that here, 50% effect of non-damaging ailments from crits. That's also very good because shocks are actually really nice. We get about 20% shock with this build on Cirrus. We grab this cluster here. This cluster is insane because it gives us 10% damage from the mastery itself. So this actually ends up being, you know, 2.5% damage per node. But it's actually giving us a lot of defense because it's capping our spell suppression. Here with this mastery, we take mana reservation efficiencies to fit everything with charisma. And then the lethal pride is something that I need to talk about because people keep asking me about this. It's really important. So what you're looking for is actually chance to deal double damage. 5% double damage is fine. You're looking for intimidate if you can, which I personally don't have. But what's important is that you get a lot of strength on this. So this will help us cap our strength. So with this, we're going to be aiming to get like maybe 40 or to 60 strength, so we can have a lot of freedom on our gear. Alternatively, if you choose to not use an astral plate as a chest, which by the way is viable, if you choose to use an evasion base, you can grab this mastery, 100% increased evasion from body armor. It's also pretty good, but you're going to be losing armor, so keep that in mind. Armor, I think, is a lot stronger than evasion. Evasion is just there as like a little bit of a supplement to help us recover our life, you know, when we get hit and stuff. Well, it's going to give us some grace period where we don't get hit, which is really nice. I think the entropy system is just amazing. What they did with grace and armor, what they did with evasion and armor is just so good. Like, you guys have to try this because it's so tanky. It feels so good to play this build. So yeah, that is that. We grab all this stuff, so we get some movement speed, some crit, some damage, some life, you know, things like that. Lethality is now crazy for all proj builds. It used to be just for bows, but now it says projectile attack skills, so this gives us like a lot of multi, a lot of chance. We take this cluster, we got the life cluster, and then we travel down here, and the armor mastery, I'm taking 25% reservation efficiency from determination, so this lets us fit in determination, and we take all of that, so that's giving us a lot of armor as well. It's a really nice cluster. I take cloth and chain, and I take one evasion rating per 1 armor on gloves, and you know, this is also giving us some resistance, so, and evasion rating on armor, so it's a really efficient node for 2 points. You know, we get a lot of use out of that. I travel out here to Disciple of the Slaughter to grab that. That is obviously good. For our Watcher's Eye, this is honestly not that important. You have a lot of choices for this Watcher's Eye. I got the armor determination and the attack damage while precision. There's obviously we're using anger, we're using precision. So any beneficial damage mod is good, and any beneficial defense mod from determination is also good. So keep that in mind when you make your searches. And that pretty much sums up the tree. I hope there's nothing that I forgot to talk about. I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, now I wanted to explain really quickly how you actually deal single target on this build and why I multiply this by 2. Because some people are confused by this. Lightning Strike actually deals twice the damage that's listed here. So you see 5.7 mil, but it's actually multiplied by 2 because of how you position yourself with Lightning Strike. That changes how much damage you do. So if I position close to a boss and I simply right click, you see 1 strike hitting him. This 1 strike basically means that I am hitting him once with just a strike, but not the projectiles. But if I were to step a little bit away from him and strike the ground, you see 2 strikes. So what's happening here is the projectiles from the strike, from where I'm hitting the ground, are hitting him, but also the strike is hitting him. Alternatively, if there's a boss that doesn't move, like that likes to move away from me, you can hit sideways. So you can see that I'm still getting 2 strikes, and I'm still hitting with my projectiles. But he's still getting hit. So if you can't make distance, some bosses like to move close to you. Then what you should do is, if you're close to them, you should hit to the side. Now, it can be kind of tricky to position this properly, but this is what you can do. So you can hit to the side. So you actually just straight up multiply your damage by 2. It's kind of like how Ancestral Call used to work with Molten Strike. It is also why it's extremely important to get additional Strike Gloves or Tribal Fury anointed on your amulet. But I think 2 additional strikes is really the sweet spot. So you can get a total of 3 striked enemies. And that is how we deal damage with this build. And I'm pretty sure that is everything I need to talk about this build. It's really important to roll your flasks now. I think it's super crucial now to get good flasks, good flask rolls, and yeah, that is pretty much my Lightning Strike Raider that I've been playing. And if you want to play a Berserker, make sure you check out Kobe Black Mamba. He's playing the Berserker variant of this build. He's doing all content with it, 100% delirium and that sort of stuff. He's pretty juiced now at this point. So yeah, make sure to check him out as well if you want to see the Berserker. And make sure you put your bets in for our boxing match on the 31st of December, where we'll settle once and for all whether Berserker or Raider is better. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell on the way out. Love you guys. Bye-bye.